Hello everybody and welcome to this video about the astrology of the week beginning Saturday the 22nd of March until Sunday the 30th of March. So that is a whole week, and this is Western tropical astrology from the point of view of New Zealand, Aotearoa and Australia and the Southern Hemisphere in general. So we are in the autumn season, we're not in the spring season, and we've just had the autumn equinox. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the eclipse portal, the Mercury retrograde, the Venus retrograde, and the Venus and Mercury kazimis that we've got this week. It's a chance to have an audience with the sun, asking a question. Mercury and Venus will be in the heart of the sun, an audience with the king, and those are two magical moments that we've got coming up this week, a chance to receive insights and guidance from above, from the royals. Anyway, so my name is Fiona of Sun and Moon Calendar, and I make calendars, and you can still buy one for 2025. They're at a reduced price of $24.95, so you can go to sunandmooncalendar.nz to order. And yeah, please like, comment or subscribe if you like this video. I'm going to go through the moon phase that we're in, which is the lunar month of Pisces, and then the aspects and transits day by day, and then have a look at the major things going on. Here we go. I'm going to talk now about the lunar phase that we're in, the lunar month of Pisces, as it's known in Western tropical astrology. In many maramataka, it's known as Kōterana, and different cultures around the world will have their own names for this particular lunar phase, which started this year on the 28th of February with the new moon in Pisces. So that part of the sky that we know of as Pisces, there was a new moon that took place, and this has been a pretty highly focused upon part of the sky lately because of the stellium in Pisces, where there's a lineup of many big planets, and I've been talking about that, and I will come back to it later in the video. We had that new moon in Pisces, and then the moon was waxing. We had the waxing phase with the moon growing bigger every day. On Friday the 7th of March, it was the first quarter, and then the moon reached its peak, its fullest moment on the 14th of March, last Friday, and that's when we had that full moon eclipse visible in New Zealand and a little bit in the eastern parts of Australia, and that was this beautiful blood moon, looking so mysterious and prophetic in the sky. And then we've had the waning phase, so the moon's light has been gradually decreasing this week, and on Saturday night, Sunday morning, Australia, New Zealand, we will have the last quarter moon, and this is where the sun and the moon are exactly square to each other, forming a square angle of 90 degrees, bringing us some tension that makes us want to drive forward and finish our tasks for the month. And the moon will appear as an exact, magically appearing exact half moon in the sky with that. And then the light will wane further and further until we come down to that quiet time. The last few days before the next new moon is a time to be bringing our energy down. Try to avoid starting new things until after the new moon. And this new moon on Saturday the 29th comes with a solar eclipse in the sign of Aries at 9 degrees of Aries. So that's a big time. I'm just going to close this window that's next to me, make it a little quieter. Okay, so with that eclipse, there could be sudden fated beginnings, sudden endings as well, but more likely to be beginnings. We can't see this eclipse in the Southern Hemisphere, and in fact with a solar eclipse most people can't see it. They cover a much smaller area than lunar eclipses, but somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere, and I think it's in the Atlantic Ocean, don't quote me on that, anyway, will be the main point of that eclipse, but it will still have its effects happening to us here in the Southern Hemisphere. So take note of what happens. We are in the eclipse portal now. And here is the calendar month of Pisces in the Sun and Moon calendar, which you can still buy for a reduced price of $24.95 Australian dollars or New Zealand dollars. It's available through the website sunandmooncalendar.com. But anyway, I wanted to show you this. We had the new moon on the 28th of February, then the light's been growing and you can see the white part of the moon getting bigger and bigger and bigger until we had the full moon lunar eclipse on the 14th of March, and then you can see the dark part of the moon getting bigger and bigger. Last Thursday we had the autumn equinox where the sun moved into Aries, third quarter moon on the 23rd, that's for New Zealand, this is the New Zealand one, coming down to the 28th where it will be that last balsamic moon, that last little bit of the moon, and we won't even see it at that stage. And I'm just going to give you the quote for this month. Every month in the calendar there's an affirmation about the special gifts that the sign of the time gives us. And for the sign of Pisces, I chose the affirmation, I am connected to the eternal flow of life. And I'm talking about it now because we do have such a lot of energy in Pisces, and it does give us an opportunity to think about those bigger parts of life, the parts of life that go on and on forever and ever. And we have all our troubles on the earthly plane, our physical challenges, our material challenges, the limitations of our bodies, the limitations of being in an earthly existence and needing to face up to reality. But beyond that there is eternal something, eternal existence. Perhaps that's reincarnation, might be the way that we understand that or experience it, but there is much that goes on and on forever, and even when we die our soul goes on and on forever. And it's a good opportunity with all the planets in Pisces to be thinking about who or what is my eternal self. And looking now at the Australian sample, I just wanted to show you also the pink line there shows Venus retrograde going on and on through that month, and then on the 15th the yellow line started up, and that's for Mercury retrograde, and they are going on into April. We're in the really thick part of the retrograde season right now. Okay, looking now at this week's aspects and transits, what does this week have in store for us? Quite a lot. You can see there's a lot going on there. We start on Saturday the 22nd of March with the last quarter moon, and 23rd early in the morning in New Zealand, and also Venus sextile Pluto. And this is a chance for us to explore some of our shadow side, but with Venus it can be helped along because Venus is a benefic. Venus can help us to feel positive about that. Relationships can help us with it. Maybe we can put some money towards some healing work with a healer that works well for us. And I've said that that's Venus sextile Pluto, 3 degrees 22 minutes of Pisces, but no, Venus will be in the sign of Aries and Pluto early in the sign of Aquarius, so ignore that Pisces bit there. Okay, and that comes very close to the moment when Venus is conjunct the Sun, and this is the key point of the Venus retrograde, and I should have put an R there for Venus retrograde. Venus is between us and the Sun exactly at that moment. It's having a meeting, or she is having a meeting with the Sun. I'm going to talk more about that when I look at the major things. Okay, and then straight after that, the next day, we have the Sun sextile Pluto, and these are all new aspects for Pluto. So the Sun and Venus and Mercury will come into these aspects with Pluto every year, but now we have Pluto in Aquarius as of quite recently, and we have a whole 20-year cycle of the Sun and Mercury and Venus going around once a year and making these aspects to Pluto in Aquarius. And of course, Pluto in Aquarius is a whole new era for humanity, for the next 20 years, bringing us more grassroots organizations, devolved power, more technology. Yes, the truth of it is far more technology, but also innovative ways of organizing ourselves as humans that could be really helpful for the world, and more humane, more egalitarian. So there can be some real benefits with that. Okay, and then on Tuesday the 25th, we've got the Sun conjunct Mercury, and this happens 3 times a year in terms of its Mercury cazimi. It's Mercury between the Sun and us. And then we also have superior conjunctions where Mercury is behind the Sun. But I'm going to talk more about that a little bit further on in the video, because it's a good chance to get some insight. All right. Then we have Mercury sextile Pluto. So lots of sextile relationships with Pluto. And with this sextile relationship, it tends to be more flowing and easier, but we need to take some action to help make that help happen. So because of that Pluto influence, and then we've got a bit of Chiron action with Mars square action on Mars square Chiron on the 27th. So some deep stuff could be coming up. It could be a chance to do some healing work. And if you get an opportunity to do this through journaling, through some deep talks with somebody who can help you get to the underneath stuff and the nitty gritty, it's a good opportunity to make the most of. Okay, and then we have Venus and Mercury, Venus on the Thursday, Mercury on the Sunday, going back into Pisces. Okay, and on Saturday the 29th, that new moon eclipse, and I haven't got it there, and I should have it there, a really big moment of Neptune moving into Aries, and that happens on the 30th in New Zealand, and the 30th in Australia, and the 31st in New Zealand. So with the Mercury and the Venus cazimi, this is the word cazimi apparently comes from Arabic, and it means to be in the heart of the sun. And one by one, first Venus and then Mercury, will be coming to that very central point of their retrogrades, in line, in with the sun, talking to the sun. And of course the sun is like everything. The sun is the most powerful entity in our earthly world. Of course, it brings life to everything, and the sun is in astrology is seen as like the leader, the king. And I am saying king, it has got a masculine energy about it. It shines so brightly and brings vitality and life force to everything. And these two, the planet of relationships and the planet of our communication and conversation, and so much about our life here on earth, they are in audience with the king. And I think those are pretty magical moments, and moments to take note of as we go through. And now going on to the main events this week. All right. We just had the autumn equinox with the sun going into Aries. We're still in the eclipse portal, so still taking note of things that happen that can bring a turnaround in your life. And so we're in that 2-week portal between the lunar eclipse that we had on Friday the 14th and the solar eclipse that's coming up on Saturday the 29th of March. So all this month around and about, there could be fated endings and fated beginnings, not perhaps for everyone, but for people around you, and in your own life it could be something that appears like a little thing but ends up causing a big turnaround in your life over the next 6 months or so. So it is a good idea to take notes of any people you meet that are a surprise, any news that you receive that's a bit of a surprise, and that could lead to a change of direction. We still have the stellium in Pisces with Neptune, Saturn, the North Node, and the Sun has just gone into Aries. We had the new moon in Pisces, and Venus and Mercury over this next week will be retrograding back into Pisces. So as I talked about earlier, a lot about that flowing, connecting to the overall energy of the universe, the unseen energies, watery feelings, water as a substance, gas as a substance, music and art, spiritual connection, compassion, unconditional love. And then the downside, the things to avoid is the confusion, being taken for a ride because you're believing something that you shouldn't believe, trying to stay grounded. Those are our challenges. While we have this very strong Pisces energy, especially with Neptune at like 29 degrees and 59 minutes, just about to move into Aries, and that the last degree of a planet in a sign can be challenging. Okay, Venus retrograde, we are in that. As I said, we're in the thick of a very powerful retrograde season, and it has been going since December, and it's going to be going until April. And in fact, Mercury is retrograde at the moment for 3 weeks, and normally I find that really long. And this year I'm thinking 3 weeks, that's nothing. We've just done 3 months basically of Mars retrograde, and now we've got like another 6 weeks of Venus retrograde and Mercury on retrograde on top of that. Whatever, we're in retrograde mode anyway. Okay, but on the 23rd of March we've got the Sun conjunct Venus, and that is the center point of the Venus retrograde. And while Venus has been in retrograde, we've been reviewing our relationships, our money, the things that we value and how we show our value to them, adornments and making things look beautiful, and how we connect with people in a sweet and diplomatic way. Okay, and some of those have gone for a bit of a holiday during this retrograde period from the 2nd of March to the 13th of April. We're not quite as good at those as we usually are. Venus is taking a step back to revise and review. Things that can happen during Venus retrograde is very classic, that you're bumping into people from your past. This also happens with Mercury retrograde, and this could be women from your past. And I've seen like it felt like almost every day over the last week I was seeing somebody either at a distance, or actually I met up with people from my past that I hadn't connected with for a while. That's classic Venus and Mercury retrograde. You can also review relationships from your past. I found myself thinking back to my very first boyfriend, and I hadn't thought about him for a while, and that was kind of nice to remember that actually he was a good guy and it was a nice relationship, but he hadn't been in my mind at all for years and years. And that's a sort of review period. And it might be that some of the reviewing ends up with changes of direction and changes of decision, or it might be just that it's all just integrating in your mind and settling into the right places in your mind, so that you're sure about yourself and where you're going once we come out of the retrograde. Okay. All right, some questions to ponder. We have Venus cazimi, and this is when Venus will be conjunct the Sun. It's so we have the Sun, and as it appears in the sky, Venus was an evening star. So like, here's the horizon, the Sun would go down, and Venus was very bright and beautiful and bold, the third brightest object in the sky after the Sun and the Moon. Okay, so before the retrograde, we saw Venus very radiant in the west on the horizon after sunsets. And then Venus has been, as she appears, getting closer and closer to the Sun, and we can't see her now. We can't see her at all because she's with the Sun, and the Sun is way too bright to see anybody else. Okay, and after this cazimi moment, Venus is going to pull away from the Sun and get further and further away until she appears again, but she will appear as a morning star in the east. So before the sunrise in the mornings, after the retrograde, that's when we'll be able to see her. Okay, but at this cazimi moment, there are some questions we can ponder, and I've put the exact times there. I have found that for Mercury Kazemi, when there's a Mercury retrograde and we have this Kazemi moment where Mercury is with the Sun, that when I ask a question close to the exact time, I get an answer to that question. And I haven't had enough chance to experiment with this with Venus Kazemi, but I'm going to try. So with the Mercury retrograde, I try to be like, within 15 minutes either side of the Sun of that moment. Okay, so in New Zealand, Venus Kazemi is on the 23rd of March at 2:07 p.m. and you can see there also the Australian times, and I'm just going to mention the Australian Eastern Daylight Time at 12:07 p.m. So on the 23rd of March, that is Sunday. Perhaps you can take a break from whatever you're doing and think about these kinds of questions. And I've put some questions there. You can think of whatever questions you want, whatever questions you think are important for your love life, for your relationships in general, beyond your intimate partners, for your money, okay, for the things that you love and you have and hold and want to enjoy in your life, and also for beauty and the way you make yourself beautiful and your surroundings beautiful, but also self-love. So I've put these 3 questions here. How can I best love myself? How can I best love others? And how can I best love the things I have? Sometimes I'm a bit rough with the things I have. Maybe I should value them more. But I'm going to give another set of questions now. And these are adjusted for Venus being in Aries, because this Venus Kazemi is in Aries at 2 degrees of Aries, okay? And with Aries, it's all about yourself, yourself, oneself, and how you want to go out and make your mark in the world. What can you get? What can you chase? What can you fight for? What can you pursue? That is Aries energy. What can you pioneer? What can you initiate? So I've adjusted those 3 questions with an Aries energy, and they're going to sound a little challenging. I suspect they will sound a little bit selfish. Nevertheless, there's a place for that in life. What initiative can I take to love myself? Aries is about action and starting new things. How can I get the love of others? Perhaps we need to pursue love a little bit more, to work for it, to reach for it, to ask for it, even to fight for it. How can I get the things I would love to have? And I suspect some of you will be saying, oh my gosh, that's so acquisitional. Gosh, it's not about what you can get and fight for. Love should just come naturally. Yes, true. But with Aries energy, and especially as Venus will be becoming a morning star, there is a place to pursue the things that we want and love. Okay. Going on to Mercury retrograde. Those arrows still haven't worked. Where there's squares, they are arrows. And I tried to fix it, but it didn't work. Okay. All right. So we are in the middle of Mercury retrograde. It's only 3 weeks, but it usually causes a bit of a hullabaloo somewhere in your life or in the lives of those around us. And this is where we need to be checking our communications, crossing our T's and dotting our I's, and being aware that things are going to take longer because machines break down and computers don't work and all that. Okay. But I have really found that the Kazemi moment that we have on the 25th of March, that works for me. I ask the question around about that time, and I can see in Australia it's the middle of the night, so not ideal, but perhaps you want to ask the question just before you go to sleep. Well, there's a siren going past. So 6:48 in the morning for New Zealand and earlier in the morning for Australia. Mercury Kazemi. I'm going to try and be awake then. Oh, actually, I'm always awake then. So that's Tuesday. Yeah. And I'm going to ask the universe a question. And I've put there the topics of Mercury. There are so many. And there are so many that govern our daily life It's our local connections, our local communications, our social networking, our computers, our cell phones, all of that, emails, also our brothers and sisters and other relations, community networking, community small groups, handcrafts, our skills with our hands. For me, maybe I'll ask something. I want to get better at guitar and music, of course. Even how we converse with each other. If you're not so good with conversation, if you have trouble talking to people, you get tongue-tied, maybe the opposite sex, have trouble talking to, you're a man and you have trouble talking to women, or you're a woman, you have trouble talking to men. We've got Mercury retrograde and Venus retrograde talking, relationships. It's a good time to ask for advice about how could you get better at that? What could you do? What could you learn? And wait for a download. Notice what pops into your mind or what someone says to you over the next couple of weeks, even the next few days. Sometimes I get my answer really quickly, and sometimes it takes a few days or a week or so. And then on Saturday, the 29th of March, the solar eclipse in the sign of Aries at 9 degrees of Aries. And that was the same point that Mercury turned retrograde and the same point that Venus turned retrograde. If you've got any planets or points around there, 9 degrees of Aries, they are being really activated now. So things are happening for you. Okay, so as I said, that eclipse is not visible in the Southern Hemisphere, but it is still a big deal, and perhaps you might want to meditate around that time and notice if anything comes to you, but also just taking note of any events, big or small, that happen to you that are unexpected and have a feeling of fate or destiny about them. They could lead to a change of direction for you or for others in your life. And then on the 30th of March in Australia, Sunday the 30th, on the Monday the 31st of March in New Zealand, Neptune moves into Aries for the first time in 166 years, bringing us a new era, a new start. It's right on the world axis. It's important for the world, but I'll talk more about that in the next video. So there we go, everyone. That is my video for this week. I hope that you have a chance to take a moment to pause to ask the universe a question at Mercury retrograde Cazimi moment, and maybe try it also for the Venus Cazimi moment. But anyway, thinking about what you want in your relationships and in your love life, and in your self-worth and how you love yourself. It's fantastic time to be thinking about that, as well as any practical communication questions with the Mercury Cazimi. Good luck with the eclipse. I hope that any turnarounds for you and changes of direction feel wonderful and blessed, and even if they're hard, that you recognize that they're a good thing for you in the long term. So bye for now, and all the best for the week. Hei kōna rā, ka kite.